I'm joined here with Rich Davis, author of the new comic book phenomenon called The Cult of Dracula. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's amazing to be here with you.
Now, how many issues are involved in the Cult of Dracula series?
So, Cult of Dracula is part of a three-volume saga that's broken up into three volumes of six issues each. So, Cult of Dracula is six issues. And then in 2022, we'll be following that with Rise of Dracula, which will be another six issues. And then in 2023, we'll be following that with the final volume called Reign of Dracula, which is also six issues. And we're working on possibly doing a couple of one shots that kind of give more background information about some of the characters that people have kind of gravitated toward and have become really popular. The Dracula's Brides will probably get their own one shots. So the original 18 issues could stretch out into 21. But I really don't see it going much further than that because I have a specific story that I want to tell, and it's a very rich universe, and you could tell a lot of stories in it, but I don't want to drag it out too long. I'd rather cut it off a couple of issues too early than drag it out one issue too long.
What can fans all expect in this series?
I what I can confidently say is no matter how well you know Bram Stoker's classic tale of terror, you have no idea where Cult of Dracula is going to take you. We start with a very small, simple premise. There's an investigator from the FBI who has been tasked to investigate this terrible event that they're calling the Cult of Dracula mass suicide. So it's kind of like a Jonestown or a Waco, Texas type thing where the media is saying that these cultists have killed themselves. It becomes very evident once Agent Brahm arrives that this was not a suicide. Something terrible happened here, and people are trying to cover it up. So it starts out very simple, true crime story, and from there, the further you go into the story, it kind of spirals into this exploration of a cult that's been around for thousands of years, worshiping an ancient blood goddess. So we get to find out a whole lot about the way the cult functions and their different incarnations throughout history. And then as we keep going down the spiral, it broadens even more, and we start to discover an entirely new vampire mythology.
How would you say support has been with this new comic book compared to your first books that were released in previous years?
It has been overwhelmingly successful. When I started shopping this book back in late 2019, I was fully convinced that I was going to go the Kickstarter route, and I would be lucky if I sold five copies. I knew my buy three of them, so I just needed to sell two more. Um, and so I ended up we released the book through a small publisher called Second Sight Publishing, and sales were overwhelming. We sold more in excess of 10,000 units of issue number one, which for an independent comic book that from a writer that no one's ever heard of, those are killer numbers. And the book was actually so successful in that first issue that the publisher couldn't afford to continue publishing it because the print orders were just too large for them. So from there, we were able to shop it to a few more publishers, and ultimately we ended up with Source Point Press, which I think has been the absolute best move we could have possibly made. We're closing in on about 125,000 units sold now, and we're only up to issue four. So it is Cult of Dracula. It began as kind of a cult underground horror hit that if you knew about it, you were cool. And if you didn't know about it, well, maybe somebody will tell you about it someday. To now, it's become one of the best selling independent comic books on the market. And we're outselling some Marvel and DC books, which is huge. So yeah, it's the response has been incredible. Retailers have really gotten behind it. Fans and readers are picking it up and they love it. Collectors are investing in it. So it's hitting hitting all the demographics in the comic book hobby. So I'm still blown away by the fact that it's doing so well, but it really is. It's really kicking some butt.
For people wondering that may not have read the Cult of Dracula series, where can they access this comic book series? Is this available in comic book stores right now?
Mhm. Yeah, it is. It's in comic book stores all over the world. We have, I think, somewhere around 50 stores in Canada are carrying it. Hundreds of stores in the United States are carrying it. We're on shelves in the UK and Ireland and Croatia, Japan. We're all over the world. Please find a local comic book shop near you and support them first, because the local comic book shop market is the absolute backbone of what we're able to do. Your local comic book shop, they're the key to finding those cool, interesting things that don't have billion-dollar movie franchises behind them yet. So go to your local comic book shop. If you don't have one, or if your local comic book shop isn't carrying it, you can find us on Amazon. Multiple online stores have it. And if you like to read your comics digitally, you can go to Comixology, and you can buy the book through digitally that way. So there's all kinds of ways to find a copy.
Perfect. Well, thanks again so much for joining me today, Rich.
Absolutely.